you know, that thing about bullying, we were just saying, children are so resilient and inquisitive. And I also written 2 children's books with deaf protagonists. And when I go into children's schools and talk to them and show them my hearing aid, and if there's other children in the school and they've got, you know, a cochlear implant or a BAHA or a hearing, a behind the ear hearing aid like me, I'm always like, oh, let me see yours, what colour's yours? And, you know, and all the other children are really excited and want to find out.
I used to play that at school. You showed me mine, yours, and I'll show you mine.
Oh dear, glad I didn't go to your school. But yeah, I think it's one of the biggest things that I hear a lot and that I dealt with at school is, you know, the deaf awareness training for teachers and for adults in education environments, and things like not turning around and talking while you're writing on the board, or not standing in front of a window.
I mean, you wouldn't think of it unless someone pointed it out, would you? It's not as if somebody's doing it deliberately to snub the deaf child in the class. I mean, you just, unless you were constantly thinking, it wouldn't be in your head, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this thing about Sarah's son being talked to as if he's a bit stupid.
Yeah.
I think this happens a lot with people with various forms of disability. I mean, I know a friend of mine who's in a wheelchair, says often people talk about me and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, I can hear you. I might be in a wheelchair, but I'm not stupid. I can hear you. Why don't you talk to me? Don't talk about me.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
It is a historical thing. You know, I discovered that in the 1900s there was an asylum, it was called, the Asylum for the Deaf and Dumb in Elephant and Castle in London, and deaf people were sent there to live, and it was called an asylum. I couldn't find out much about what the conditions were like in there, but this idea of deaf and dumb, and as we know, dumb is someone who can't speak, but also now it's historically been used as a phrase for someone who might be called an idiot, which also is ableist language. But it's that historical thing that we've still not released. And deaf people are not stupid. Deaf people are some of the most amazing people I've ever connected with and have the most insight. And because, you know, we might not be able to hear everything that someone with full hearing has, we're so much more aware of visually, and we can read people's emotions. I interviewed a deaf nurse for my book who works in the NHS, and she said quite often the hearing doctors will ignore someone or ignore some signs that they see because the person is saying that their symptoms are something, or they're saying that they're fine, and she'll pick up on things because she's so aware of reading people's body language and emotions. And I think, yeah, it's really sad to hear that is still happening, but hopefully with people like Rose and incredible deaf people in the media doing amazing things, we can just get rid of that stigma, because we are not stupid.
I have to admit, I didn't know who Rose Ayling-Ellis was because I don't watch Strictly, but I know now. I mean, I do remember watching clips and thinking, wow, how can you do that when you can't hear the music? It does, on the face of it, seem an incredible thing to be able to do. Right, Sarah, thank you very much. Another great call. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Colin Brazier.
Supermarkets are introducing barriers that stop customers leaving stores without a receipt, even if they've bought nothing. Shoplifting's rocketing, but is this the way to stop it?
Colin Brazier on LBC. Anika wanted to rent her flat out so she could move in with Mo. Graham had to find a home with space for his growing family. Sophie wanted a shorter commute to the office. And Alex wanted a home and a project in one. Everyone's story is different, but wherever life takes you, Leaders Estate Agents will get you there. Leaders, celebrating 40 years in property. Visit leaders.co.uk.
Get ready for the coronation weekend and feel the power to lower prices with Tesco Club Card. Just scan your club card or app,
Club Card,
and boom, the prices go down. Like 25% off 6 or more bottles of wine, such as 19 Crimes Rosé or Tesco Finest Garvey. Tesco. Every little helps. Drink aware 18+, majority majority of larger stores ends 8th of May. Club card or app required.
Get up and go.
Millions of drivers are part of something special. They are members of the AA, the UK's #1 breakdown service. With more expert patrols across the country and unlimited call-outs, we'll always be there for you. Be with the best from $7.50 a month at aa.com. The AA. Join today. New customers only. T's and C's apply. Verified patrol and personal member numbers at the aa.com/best.
Discover a place of diversity and opportunity where you push boundaries and break barriers. The University of Hertfordshire shapes tomorrow's leaders and trailblazers. It's somewhere the industry turns to innovate, to grow. This is a place that never settles, never stops. Discover a place where ideas move at a different pace. Hearts beats faster. Search University of Hertfordshire to find out more.
Nothing's more British than a cuppa and a biscuit. Taking a 15-minute break to reset, recharge and feel better. But the perfect break needs the perfect biscuit. And let's be honest, as the original and the best, only a McVitie's one will do. Time for a biscuit break, Britain. McVitie's True Originals. Buy in store for a chance to win a truly original biscuit break.
This coronation weekend, Morrison's are helping you get your Brit on with selected packs of beer and cider from £10 each, like a 10-pack of San Miguel or Birra Moretti, a 12-pack of Copperberg and more. So, crack open a cold one. It's time to celebrate the long weekend. Cheers to that. Majority of stores subject to availability. Exclude Scotland and Wales. Please drink responsibly.
Ian Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
9:49, Samantha Baines is here talking about Deaf Awareness Week. Let's go to Mark in Stedding in West Sussex. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Well, it's a pretty trivial story compared to what you've been talking about throughout the rest of the programme. But I just recently had a fantastic experience with the NHS and the help they can give with minor ear loss, which has made a considerable difference to me. So I won't pretend it's anywhere near as important as what your other callers have been talking about and your guests have been talking about. But it was significant, and I think that people should know that this help's out there, and it's free, and it's fantastic.
But the thing is, there will be tens of or thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who might need to know the kind of experience that you've been through. Maybe people don't know that they can get a hearing test on the NHS.
Well, which is the only reason I'm calling in for the first time to a radio programme ever in my life.
Well, we're delighted to have provoked you, Mark.
Well, thank you, you have. Well, look, the thing was, a few years ago I realised that, what I've always done is been involved in music and whatever, music production, music restoration, and as a young man attended loads of stupidly loud concerts and stuff. And when I realised, one of the few things, I'm 61 now, and one of the few things that I really enjoy is still doing a bit of music production, whatever, not professionally anymore. And I realised that I was missing something a few years ago. So when I had a hearing test, I just called, I spoke to my GP, and he advised me to go and see the Action for Hearing, is it? And I went on to see them, and they did a test, and they said, yes, you've got a certain frequency loss in your right ear, but it's not substantial enough for us to do anything about. So I said, well, fine. But what I realised was that I knew that this hearing was there because I've always had very acute hearing, and it was a bit depressing, literally depressing. I felt it was a bit uncomfortable about it. I knew there was something. I had to turn round, put my back to the speakers to make sure that I was hearing what was coming through. Anyway, the whole point is, a few years later, I got a reminder, go back, have another hearing test. So I had the other hearing test, and luckily, or not, for me, the hearing had dropped. The hearing loss had dropped just below the threshold that meant that they could help me with it. And so I was asked if I'd like a hearing aid, and I had these imaginings of, having an ear cast and waiting months and all this. And I said, we did the test, and the practitioner just went and got a little device, plugged it into a laptop, keyed in the results of my hearing test, and said, "Try this on." Showed me how to put it in, and oh my God, it was revelatory. It was beautiful, and I came back with it. Tried some music mixing or whatever, and suddenly I could hear everything, and this has made all the difference. I said to her at the time, this is fantastic, and she said, "I've never heard anybody so happy to have a hearing aid in my life."
Well, Mark, I can guarantee you that there will be, I don't know how many people, it could be 5, it could be a dozen, it could be 100, that as a result of listening to you speak over the last few minutes will go and have this test tomorrow.
If it's one, that's enough.
Exactly.
It's such a difference. I used to bring a hearing like reading glasses, for instance. I don't use it all the time. I don't need to. But whenever I'm doing something that really needs acute hearing, I just plug this in. It's free. I was amazed that this can happen.
It's great to hear from you, and I'm glad you've broken your duck phoning into LBC. Thank you very much. And let's go to John in Kingston. Hi, John.
Good evening, Ian, and thanks for tackling this subject. I'm sure it's appreciated by many people. My son is profoundly deaf. He got meningitis at the age of 15. And as you guessed there, Samantha, he had a cochlear implant fitted when he was 19. He's now in his mid-40s, coming up to that. He's never really accepted it because he never finished his schooling, and communication, he just came in the door, he's been around for his sister, he just came in the door. Communication is the problem. He can't use a phone. He hates it when there's no text on the television programs. He likes music, so he can hear with the cochlear implant and lip reading, and as the other caller said a minute ago, you have to look at them. Sorry, my son, you have to look at a person face on and speak fairly slowly, and obviously talk about the subject you're going to talk about first, so that can keep the thread going. But
what you seem to be saying, John,
it's a very lonely existence.
Yeah, what you seem to be saying is that he doesn't feel that he's living the fulfilled life that he would like to.
Yes, he doesn't. I believe he goes to bed at night and thinks that he wakes up tomorrow he'll have his hearing back. He's not living a fulfilled life at all, because socializing with people is strange. You can't operate in a crowded area because too many people talking or in a pub or a club or anything. It's very confusing. You just hear this buzzing sound, and then if you don't have the cochlear in, you get tinnitus. And your guest there will tell you people that when they go deaf, the tinnitus takes over, as it does with older people as they start to lose the hearing as well. But there should be better provision by people who make programs, and it's great that you're doing this, and perhaps you could do it again.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel really guilty that I haven't done it before, because, as I said, I've been doing this programme in one slot or another for 13 years, and it's actually quite disgraceful that this is the first time that I've done it, particularly when I've heard the calls, I suppose. Well, we don't need to go there. John, thank you very much. Samantha, what lesson do you draw from what we've been talking about, and what would you like people who are not deaf to go away thinking about deafness from after this hour's finished in about 2 minutes?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say for the last caller, isolation is a really big thing for the deaf community, and support is so important. And there are lots of deaf groups around the country that possibly his son could join and be able to communicate and lip read with other people. I think that's really important, and it's been really important for me. And I think for people with full hearing, awareness is key. So if you're just aware that 1 in 5 people in your life have some form of hearing loss or deafness, so they might be lip reading, they might be really struggling in a noisy surroundings, just educate yourself. There's so much literature out there. Go to the RNID website. There's also the British Deaf Association. Even little things like turn down the music in your cafe when it gets too loud. You know, face someone when you're talking to them. Don't stand in front of a window so you're backlit and people can't lip read. If you know someone in your workplace struggles with their hearing, you know, make provisions for them and be an ally, and that makes such a difference.
Samantha, thank you very much. And if you'd like to get hold of Samantha's book, it's called Living with Hearing Loss and Deafness by Samantha Baines, available in all good and bad bookshops, I imagine. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening, particularly in the last hour. I'll be back tomorrow from 7 as the country builds up to the King's coronation on Saturday. I'll be joined in the studio by the American author Sally Bedell Smith, who's previously written a biography of the King and has a new book out about his grandfather, George VI, and his marriage to the Queen Mother. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur, but first, it's Colin Brazier.
Thanks, Ian. Well, according to reports in the papers today, Sainsbury's has installed security gates that force shoppers to scan their receipts before being allowed to leave. If you go to one of those stores and don't buy anything, then you'll have to ask to be released. Well, Britain faces a tidal wave of shoplifting. Has it become normalised in some communities? Is it an addiction, as some claim? Either way, will a system which requires you to prove you haven't stolen anything actually work? Is it even fair? Will it make a difference? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Join me for that and more.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, President Zelensky says Ukraine does not have the weapons to attack the Kremlin. He's denied Kiev was involved in an assassination attempt on President Putin using drones. Olga Tokaryuk is a Ukrainian journalist and a resident fellow at the Oxford Reuters Institute who researches disinformation. She's told LBC it seems unlikely a drone could have breached Russia's air defenses.
There were reports that all of Moscow was protected, and of course Kremlin would be one of the first places to protect by air defense systems. So a drone that comes from Ukraine all the way to Moscow and approaches Moscow and the Kremlin undetected, you know, it seems really like a fantasy.
The parents of a teenager who shot dead 9 people at his school in Serbia have been arrested. The 13-year-old opened fire with his father's gun in a classroom this morning. This pupil describes what she heard.
I was downstairs. We had sports class downstairs. I was able to hear the shooting. It was non-stop. It was not like one shot at a time. It was shooting without stopping. I didn't know what was happening.
6 other pupils and a teacher were also injured. A man's been arrested over the murder of a woman in South London and is now facing further questioning. Police have been given more time to hold the 33-year-old. A 31-year-old woman was stabbed to death in Brixton on Monday afternoon. Officers don't believe that she knew her attacker. The UN says it wants assurances from the warring sides in Sudan that it will be allowed to deliver aid safely after 6 trucks of supplies were looted. The civil war has created a humanitarian crisis with more than 100,000 people forced to leave their homes with little food or water. The SNP has employed new auditors to replace the firm which quit working for the party 6 months ago. They've just weeks to go before a deadline to file accounts with the Electoral Commission or risk losing £1.2 million of funding. And Emma Raducanu will miss the French Open and Wimbledon this summer after having a minor procedure on both of her hands. The British #1 says she'll be out for a few months to recover. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 15 points at 77.88. The pound buys $1.25 and €1.13. LBC weather, rain in the far north of Scotland, clear elsewhere overnight with a low of 3. Rain arriving in the far southwest by the morning, a mixture of sun and cloud, and a high of 20 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Charlotte Morgan.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Colin Brazier.
evening to you. Thanks for your time. Colin Brazier with you from 10 until 1. From 11, the RAC says local authorities have found a new way of extracting millions more from motorists. Is it time we stop drivers being used by councils as cash machines? At midnight, as animal rights activists announce plans to disrupt the Derby, what is their end game exactly? Will they stop and disband if horse racing is banned, or will they carry on until it's no longer legal to own a pet? We have the front pages for you, the latest on whether there's been an attempt on the life of Vladimir Putin, and more on plans to halt the growth of artificial intelligence. But first, last month we had a really remarkable conversation. I think it was my first week here, about shoplifting. Certainly an education for me, because it was a crash course in something many of you will know by now, that radio has an extraordinary capacity to invite people to share confidences that they might otherwise be reluctant to share, say, on TV or in print. The conversation we were having then was about shoplifting, rates of which have been rocketing. Now, you can blame the cost of living, many people did. You can even blame shoplifting on addiction, medicalising something hitherto considered to be a moral question. What was revelatory to me was the experiences people had to share. One caller, Dave, rang in to describe his time as a self-confessed professional shoplifter. He said he used to steal from West End stores, making up to £800 a day, claimed to have made a lot of money. He'd given that up, he said, but still stole his lunch every day. At this point, we got a call from a corner shopkeeper who'd heard what Dave was saying, pulled over after another 12-hour shift at the corner shop, and rang in. We put the two of them on together, a shoplifter and a shop owner. It was totally spontaneous, and I thought both civil and illuminating. The shopkeeper explained that shoplifters routinely swore, spat, racially abused and assaulted him. Don't, he said, blame it on addiction. It's a bad moral choice. As I say, it tells you something about the nature of radio, that people are willing to share those experiences and keep a level head as they do so. But what also struck me was the extent to which many of you feel that shoplifting has become normalised. I thought about that conversation when I read a story today about what some supermarkets are doing about the epidemic of shoplifting. I believe that supermarkets which have adopted automated tills, which have done away with actual human beings at the checkout, do bear some responsibility for the rise in shoplifting. It's not to excuse it, but it's one of the reasons. People surely find it harder to meet the gaze of a shop worker when they're trying to get something out of a shop which they haven't paid for. And the story that made me think about that today was a report suggesting that some supermarkets, and more supermarkets, are now insisting on customers producing a receipt before they can physically leave the shop. Have you seen this happen? I have to confess it's news to me, but it seems that a few supermarkets are trialling it at least, and the practice appears to be spreading. According to the Daily Mail, Sainsbury's has installed security gates that force shoppers to scan their receipts before being allowed to exit. If you go to one of those stores and don't buy anything, something I've done on a few occasions, then you'll have to ask to be released. There's been a strong reaction from some people who say the system puts them under suspicion of stealing. Others have accused the company of treating customers like prisoners. The Mail says that barriers first started appearing in British shops at the end of last year, having also been spotted in shops in Europe. They've since been deployed apparently in other major outlets, things like Primark, as well as supermarkets, including Aldi and Morrison's. Sainsbury's apparently says the gates are only being used in small numbers of stores with self-service checkout areas. The company isn't saying publicly how many of these barriers are in use nationally. What do you make of it all? Is it a case of all customers being treated as potential criminals, or a sensible and proportionate response to a tidal wave of petty thievery? Because make no mistake, Britain is in the grip of a shoplifting epidemic. Incidences have gone up by a quarter in a year. We learned last month that even if you're caught shoplifting, the chances of being charged with any offence are vanishingly small. About 15% of those who are collared end up being charged according to the latest data. And of course, not everyone who's charged ends up being found guilty. Police themselves admit that anyone found stealing goods worth less than £200 is treated as a low priority, and they're rarely arrested. The automation of checkouts has had a lot to do with this. How many people are now tempted to slip things they haven't paid for into a bag? After all, it's one thing to fool someone at the checkout, someone you have to look in the eye, another to outwit a faceless checkout barcode scanner. Having saved money by cutting back on staff, are supermarkets now installing these gates which treat everyone like potential criminals? Are they trying to solve a problem which they've helped create? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Let's turn to the consumer expert and author Harry Wallop for a view on this. Harry, welcome to you. I have to confess, it's not something I've heard of this, not something I've seen myself. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's new to me as well, Colin. I mean, I think it makes sense on the part of the supermarkets who find themselves fighting a losing war against the euphemism they use, which is shrinkage, which is the term they use for shoplifting, and products that go walking out of the store. I mean, a lot of this is all about deterrence. It is not really about trying to catch the shoplifter who may have taken something and doesn't have a receipt. It's all about the signage to try and prompt people into not being tempted into shoplifting. It's the same psychology that has seen them install cameras above those self-scan tills, so you see your face reflected back in a screen. And it's all about, oh my gosh, I'm being recorded. It's the same psychology. It's just to give you a second pause to think, do I really want to put that bunch of bananas I haven't scanned into the bag? So yeah, I can see why they're doing it, and they're all trying all sorts of different methods at the moment to try and cut down on shoplifting, and this is just one of them.
But is this one thing that might backfire? I mean, supermarkets spend so much time trying to enhance the whole shopping experience, but if you genuinely feel that you are somehow being tarred with the same brush as actual criminals, that there is a finger of suspicion being indirectly pointed at you every time you're asked, you're not being frisked, sure, you're just popping your receipt into a scanner and then the gate's open, you leave the supermarket, but you are effectively being asked by the supermarket to prove you're not a villain. It's not a great look.
No, I think it's, yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, and there is some serious anger on social media about this, basically trying to suggest that Sainsbury's is as bad as some totalitarian regime and everyone's going to boycott Sainsbury's. I think that's just a few very angry people. The thing that will really annoy people is the fact, the annoyance of having to fish out your receipt that you may have shoved into the bottom of the bag or into your pocket, or actually not taken, because you get the option. Do you want a receipt? And lots of people don't bother. They think it's a waste of paper. So I think, what retailers always claim the future is about is what they call frictionless shopping. And this is the complete opposite of frictionless shopping. It's annoying. So I think that actually will be the thing that may possibly make the supermarkets realise this is a mistake. Interestingly, Aldi, a couple of months ago, I spotted not just put security tags on high-value items, so like on steak or on alcohol. If you wanted to get some steak from one particular store near where I live in North London, you actually had to find a member of staff who would then go out to the stockroom and get the steak for you. And it's like, well, this is annoying. This really slows down my shopping experience. And I went back in a few weeks later and found it reversed it. The steak on the shelf just had a security tag around them. So I would be surprised if this Sainsbury's experiment is seen in all stores in the coming months.
And Harry, what about the point that I made in my introduction there, that there have been times, we've all done it, I'm sure, you go in, you get halfway around, you get a call from home saying, actually, we don't need any beans, we've got some in the larder, come home. Or you get halfway around, you remember you need to be somewhere else picking up the kids from football, whatever it is. Because you feel you're in a public space. I mean, actually, you're on somebody else's premises, but you've walked through the door and you expect to walk back out of the door unmolested. But actually now you have to presumably go and get a security guard and say, actually, I don't have a receipt because I haven't done any shopping. Oh, really, sir? Okay, I'll let you wait for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite common for me. I often go to supermarkets for work purposes, just to look at the prices and then walk straight back out. As I understand it, this is a barrier at the end of the self-service area. So it's not to get out of the whole store, it's to get out of the kind of the kettling area of the self-service, which is often a sort of little tight area, and often there's actually, well, before they put these barriers in, there was usually a shop worker there anyway, again, to sort of, deter people from shoplifting or possibly to help you. So I think you can just go around to another exit. And indeed, in the old days, when they had manned tills, you could only leave the store through the tills, and I frequently had to just step over or force one of the barriers open when I hadn't bought anything. So I think it's possible to leave the store without scanning your receipt. You just have to go out the wrong way.
Got you. Looking at this more broadly, I mean, that increase in shoplifting in the space of a year is an extraordinary rise. And there is a sense in which, and certainly from the phone I did 2-3 weeks ago, that for some people this is kind of normalising, really. And people are quite open about it. And that's what I found really extraordinary.
Yeah, I think there is a slight mood afoot, and I think the supermarkets need to be careful here. I mean, the term that's really gained traction in the last month or so is greedflation. I think people are very sympathetic towards big companies being forced to put up their prices because they too were suffering, like the rest of us, from very high energy bills, from soaring cost inflation, the cost of the goods they had to buy from the food manufacturers, from the food factories, from the wholesalers. There is now a sense that possibly the supermarkets are pushing it, and are they really sharing the pain with consumers? And actually, is this just an opportunity for them to claw back some money? And I think there is a small amount, but a significant amount of consumers who think, well, actually, you know what? I'm entitled to that free can of Coca-Cola or that free sandwich as part of my shopping. I think that's the worry, that supermarkets need to be careful and just, I think, to get consumers back on their side. And now, actually, if you shoplift, you're potentially putting someone out of work because we can't afford to pay someone if we lose money from all you guys shoplifting.
And can we just spare a thought, Harry? And I'm sure you do, not so much for the big supermarkets. So it's tough if you're on the shop floor having to wear a body cam or having to stop somebody, physically try and stop somebody is nicking some stuff. But more for the people who know the stock is actually going to hit them at their bottom line. The corner shopkeepers, we had one phone in a couple of weeks ago who, he'd done another 12-hour shift. He was listening to me talk to a man who was a self-confessed shoplifter, and he just had to demonstrate this guy very politely. But, when he tries to stop shoplifters, they're not stealing from some bland, anonymous corporate entity. They're stealing from him.
Yeah, and I think, you speak to shopkeepers and they worry far more about the threat to their own personal safety than from shoplifting. I mean, if you ask, the various surveys have been done by the British Retail Consortium, and that's the thing that really worries shopkeepers is people have just, is this a post-COVID thing? People seem to have just, their filters have gone, and people are prepared to be far more angry and unrational in public in a way that they just didn't seem to be. So yeah, I think a lot of shopkeepers suffer not just from verbal abuse, from physical abuse too, and I don't know how we've allowed this to happen. And partly police, police forces just do not take this seriously. They see it as a minor irritation, no worse than sort of, littering in the street. And it, of course, it isn't. It is very serious.
Yeah, and can be a gateway to more serious crimes. I'm convinced of that. Harry Wallop, so good to talk to you. Appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. This is from George, who says, it's an important distinction actually that George draws. He says that Costco, the big Costco stores, they sign your receipt as you leave. Sometimes the queue to leave the shop is longer than the queue for the checkout itself. So long as it's managed properly, I'm all for it. If it becomes a time-consuming process, then I can see it becoming a problem. I suppose, George, the thing is that Costco is different from the high street supermarkets, isn't it? You get the membership card and all that sort of stuff. It's a different type of experience. People perhaps would be more willing to tolerate their big monthly or bi-monthly shop at Costco requiring a bit more personal admin than their daily shop at their local Sainsbury's, for instance. Are supermarkets doing enough to combat shoplifting? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to Colin Brazier on LBC. It's 10:17.
This is LBC.
Janet from Macmillan Cancer Support has discovered a new weapon in the fight against cancer. Dominoes. By getting African and Caribbean communities advice they need, so everyone wins, even though Janet never does. Macmillan Cancer Support. Wherever you are, we do whatever it takes to help people living with cancer.
Paramount Plus is a mountain of entertainment for only $6.99 a month. Stream the iconic Yellowstone.
I'm doing this for our family.
New Kiefer Sutherland spy thriller Rabbit Hole.
I can't tell it's real and what's not.
The box office smash Smile and brilliant sci-fi drama La Brea.
Where the hell are we?
Feeling flaky? No problem. You can cancel anytime and we're completely ad-free. Except for this one. Blockbusters, originals and iconic shows all on Paramount Plus. Join now. T's and C's apply. Subscription required and 18 plus. Auto renews at $6.99 per month unless cancelled. Price subject to change.
Experience. It's knowing what a healthy deal looks like. Right now, you can get 2 months free when you take out Saga Health Insurance. You get 24/7 GP access all year round whenever you want it. And the freedom to choose your preferred private hospital and room should you need it. Simply search Saga Health Insurance today and get 2 months free. Saga Health Insurance. Experience is everything. Over 50s only.
2 months free for new customers starting before May 15. Pay by monthly direct debit for the first year. Choose your own hospital by selecting Saga Countrywide Hospital List or London Upgrade.
At Tesco Mobile, get the brilliant iPhone 13 with its advanced dual camera, plus 25 gigs of data, so you can share every memory. All for just $34.99 a month with Club Card prices, saving you £198. And thanks to Club Card prices, your contract price will stay frozen. This is Supermarket Mobile. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 21st of May. Was $40.49. Club Card and 36-month credit agreement required. Subject to status and availability. Club Card price frozen for contract duration. Terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
Are rising costs forcing you into unaffordable debt? An individual voluntary arrangement from CreditFix could help. Write off up to 81% of your unsecured debt with manageable repayments and all interest and charges frozen. With over 14,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, CreditFix could help you to a brighter financial future. Just text DEBT to 66777. Text DEBT to 66777 now. Terms apply. May not be suitable for all. Can affect credit rating. Free advice. moneyhealth.org.uk.
Colin Brazier on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
That noise you're going to hear in the supermarket aisles, is it panic? Is it panic? In a year, shoplifting has increased by a quarter. Are supermarkets doing enough to combat shoplifting? That's our question. And it's spurred by a story today that Sainsbury's is effectively asking people who've been shopping there to produce receipts so they can leave at least part of the store. It's led to a furious reaction online, people saying effectively the supermarket's holding them prisoner, demanding that they show a receipt to be released. That might be rather overcooking it, but it's a measure, is it not, of how the supermarkets are nervous about the amount of business that's disappearing through the doors without being paid for. Neil in Middlesbrough texts to say, I was in Tesco last night and I was leaving when the trolley suddenly stopped. I was nearly thrown over the top. The alarms went off and a staff member came running over asking for my receipt. The assistant told me that all trolleys have now been fitted with a device on the wheels that track your self-shop payments. She apologised when I showed the receipt and said it was an error. Has that happened to you or anything like it? Anna's in Northampton. Hi, Anna.
Hello, Colin. Thank you for taking my call.
Pleasure.
So I think there's a bit of a different strand to this, and from my perspective at least, it's that wholly innocent people are also on the tail end of this endeavour, the supermarket determination to stop the shoplifting in its tracks. And I can only describe it as targeted last month. I have phoned up about this before. I spoke with Dean Dunham. Because I sent a text and somewhat outraged by what had happened to me. And I had gone into one of these supermarkets. It wasn't in fact my own ordinary supermarket. And I'll just very quickly tell you what had happened. I mean, your listeners have probably heard this story before, but I walked in after going to the vet and needed some batteries. And I picked up a basket and proceeded to pick up a couple of things, literally 4 things, with black bags and batteries and a couple of other things. I went to the desk to a man to check out, stood in time to pay for the items, and then obviously got my receipt, and as I proceeded to go to the packing area, was approached by a manageress who then set about telling me that I was a prolific shoplifter and a thief who had been banned from the store. And I think the problem with shoplifting, there was far more to it. It became just a bit insidious, but I think the problem with being accused of being a shoplifter is this. If I was to say to you right now, Colin, that you're a shoplifter and prove to me that you're not, you really can't, can you?
No, I hate the old cliche, but it does apply. You know, when did you stop beating your wife, sir?
Yeah. So, I mean, it took a really bizarre turn. I'll just tell you very quickly. Yeah. So I was obviously protesting my innocence because I've never shoplifted. I simply haven't. And it was like the more I protested, the more she said to me I was even wearing the same coat as a shoplifter. But as I left the store, the security guard followed me. And what transpired was, I just couldn't believe what he was saying to me. He said all the things there. But she saw me enter the store and just decided to target me. So as I was walking around the store, absolutely unaware that this was going on, that he wanted to approach me to tell me that she had set upon deciding to stop me. As I went to the desk to pay, she still was determined to stop me, and as I paid, she still wanted my bags turned out publicly. So I'd be humiliated. He then said to me, as he was telling me this, I had to look bad, I started to record him. Surreptitiously, and the reason why I did this, because he then turned around and said to me that the reason that I was stopped by this woman, and his words were mine, was that I was black.
So as far as he was concerned, it was racial profile?
He's an Asian chap, and he went on to say that the store was quite horrific towards the Asian staff. So there was a bipartite element of this. It wasn't just myself as a black person, it was the staff as well, which has been wholly denied by the supermarket. But then as I sort of went online to try to establish have other people had problems with this particular branch, and other people came forward, a mixed race teacher came forward, had been targeted by the same manageress, and this manager was talking about two black people who tried to help her, and two Asian women as well, an Asian couple. Look, what I'm trying to say is this. I think that this is going to be really problematic for people of colour, because it's already this sort of belief that we live in reduced circumstances, that we have no money, that we go to these supermarkets and still meat and wine, and I don't even drink or eat meat. So I think it's going to be really, and the fact is, I had a receipt, and this still happened. I had a receipt.
And there may be one more on the story, and I'm one of those people who reluctantly uses the automated checkouts, and I tend to say no, but offers a receipt maybe now. That would be more easy to think about pressing yes. Anna, we've got loads of calls, I'm going to move on, but thanks for yours, really appreciate it. David's a new caller from Wimbledon. David, hi.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I lived in Finland, in Helsinki, and I've noticed there over the last few months, most of the main supermarkets have moved their self-checkout counters to have exit with a gate and you put your receipt on the scan. And it just seems to have moved into the main supermarkets now.
Did it bother you when you first saw it, David?
Yeah, a little bit maybe. I sort of thought, what's that? Because I'm less used to giving out my receipt. So I suppose I was a bit surprised. But the way you've got in London, helpful people sort of drifting around the self-service scanners, helping you out if you haven't used the machines. You've got normally someone like that hanging around by the gate, and they see you're sort of like perturbed or bumbling or whatever you're and just put you through. And it's not, I mean, and it's what strikes me as strange is that I don't get the feeling, in London I do, there's lots of shopping and this, but Finland's particularly honest country, basically. I mean, you can leave your laptop in a coffee shop and go to the bathroom for 5 minutes and come back and still be there. I mean, it's not that country that, you feel, there's not lots of, in the incidents I mean, might cause attention in a store. I mean, but obviously there is enough there to make it financially worthwhile to install the barriers and to work it like that.
lots of different reasons to this, including the cost of living crisis, and the fact that police aren't offering much of a deterrence to shoplifting, and we think they are localised, or at least nationalised. It's a UK problem, but maybe there's something else going on. Maybe people just feel that, as we move towards things like the minimum income, that people just sort of feel they deserve a certain minimum standard of living, and they just feel, not just in this country, but as you say, other countries too, that the world owes them a bit of a living.
Yeah, it could well be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for other people. But, as I said, I just phoned in because you mentioned that these things are happening here in the UK. I'm just saying that we've had that being slowly installed across Finland for the last 2 or 3 months, I've noticed it. But not in a sort of we've got you a prisoner as a prisoner here sort of thing. I don't feel that. But you do need to flick your receipt across the scanner by the gate.
That's interesting. It's always good to have, a perspective from a different country. We can be quite parochial sometimes in thinking that only things happen here. They never do, of course. These are companies that do a lot of research and look at the way other supermarket chains or other shops in other parts of the world work. Sometimes they've got a corporate footprint in those countries, so we shouldn't be surprised if it does happen. But it's always interesting to get that perspective from beyond their own shores. David, you calling from Wimbledon, really appreciate you calling in. Thanks very much indeed. Our conversation this hour, are supermarkets doing enough to combat shoplifting? There was a tidal wave of shoplifting. I fear that it's become one of those low-level crimes that the police turn a blind eye to, and that has a hugely corrosive effect on the broad sense that the law needs to be adhered to. And if it's not, if we don't sweat the small things, people might then graduate to more serious crimes. And what about those corner shopkeepers who actually are seeing their own stock, their own bottom line hit when somebody walks out of the store because they feel they shouldn't be paying for their lunch, for their dinner, whatever it is, they feel they've just got the right to walk out of a shop. With our supermarkets doing enough to combat shoplifting? Coming up, President Zelensky's denied that Ukraine carried out an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin. We'll speak to a former advisor to the Ukrainians. It's just gone 10:30. Let's get the latest LBC News headlines with Charlotte Morgan.
President Zelensky says Ukraine doesn't have the weapons to attack the Kremlin. He's denied Kyiv was involved in an alleged assassination attempt on President Putin using drones. The parents of a 13-year-old who shot dead 9 people at a school in Serbia this morning have been arrested. A teenager opened fire with his father's gun in a classroom, but is too young to face charges under Serbian law. And the UN says it wants assurances from the warring sides in Sudan that it will be allowed to deliver aid safely after 6 trucks of supplies were looted. The civil war has created a humanitarian crisis with more than 100,000 people forced to leave their homes with little food or water. LBC weather, rain arriving in the far southwest overnight, a mixture of cloud and sunshine tomorrow, highs of 20.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Coming up tomorrow morning with Nick at breakfast as Russia accuses Ukraine of trying to kill Vladimir Putin. Nick speaks to the former Deputy Chief of our Defence Staff. More travel chaos on the way. Oh, yep. Heathrow security staff begin their 3-day-long walkout. And Nick's going to be speaking to the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, about the preparations for the coronation. All that more coming up too with Nick Ferrari at breakfast tomorrow morning from 7 o'clock here on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. This is LBC.
Want to get more done? Whether it's moving out, throwing a party, starting a business, or just getting a hedge trimmed in the shape of a unicorn, no questions asked, Airtasker is the app that helps you tick off your to-do list by connecting you to skilled locals. It's as simple as posting a task, choosing a tasker based on their ratings and reviews, and then done. Airtasker. Get more.
Looking for ways to use less fuel? At Esso, we can help. Small changes we can make today can start to help win the energy challenges we all face. Like your choice of fuel, making the fuel you buy go further, and even finding alternatives to using it in the first place. We call this thoughtful driving. The journey won't be easy, but we want to start it with you. You're expecting to hear from a fuel company? Well, at Esso, we think it's time that changed. Search Esso Thoughtful Driving for changes we can all start to make today.
Technology is always advancing, and with that comes progress.
But just how secure are your devices? ESET provides proven protection for both home and businesses with a wide range of antivirus and cybersecurity solutions, so you can relax knowing you're covered wherever you are. Rated excellent on Trustpilot. When technology enables progress, ESET is here to protect it. ESET Digital Security. Progress protected.
Celebrate the coronation in style with Asda's king-size beef burgers for only £4 and king-size pork sausages for just £2.50. With buns and rolls to match for £1.50 per pack. That's the weekend bun and dusted. Asda. That's more like it. Selected Asda store subject availability. Sausage 400g, burgers 680g, buns 2-pack excludes Northern Ireland.
That, my friends, is the sound of dropping some serious corn on the table of a chicken burger. That's it, turning up all stodgy and cold. What a rip-off!
Sounds like someone needs the chicken witch of the West. Darling, I'll take it from here. Bing bang boom. Voila, the ultimate bird's eye chicken shop fillet burger. Wrapped in tasty southern fried breadcrumbs and made with 100% chicken breast. Well, my work here is done. Cue the heroic music. Bit more. Bird's eye chicken shop fillet burgers. Add a bit of magic to your meal times.
When it comes to helping those that really need it, actions speak louder than words. So here's what we've been doing at British Gas. Over the past year, we've given £50 million in energy debt support, including grants to help with bills. And we're keeping homes powered with emergency energy credit. That's enough talking. Let's get on with the doing. British Gas. Eligibility criteria apply.
This is LBC with Colin Brazier. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Well, we talked about the subject a fortnight or so ago, and there was a huge influx of opinion on this subject. It is exactly the same again tonight. Lynn from Reading says it's a massive problem. The problem we're talking about is shoplifting, which has gone up by a quarter a year. She says, I work for a supermarket, one where we are partners in the business, and it's a daily occurrence. Police aren't interested, and that's well recognised, so what's to stop them? We pay for security, but they work in groups and are extremely clever. They daily walk out with bags full of shopping. My staff bonus, walking out of the door. Keep your stories coming. We'll try and get to as many of your calls as we possibly can. But in the meantime, let's just briefly peel away from domestic matters to something of great international importance. The situation in Moscow tonight. It's such a hall of mirrors, this story. I'm looking at footage. It's not a very good radio story. Of an explosion above that iconic dome of the Kremlin. And I'm looking at a headline in the Daily Telegraph. Fake or not, the Kremlin attack is extremely humiliating for Putin. Fake or not? How does that work? Let's turn to Cormac Smith, who's a former strategic communications advisor when he was Ukraine's to Pavlo Kunkin, I should say, when he was Ukraine's foreign affairs minister. Cormac, welcome to you. What do you make of this?
Colin, first, thanks very much for having me on. Look, I suppose, because I like to deal in facts, unlike Russia, which is a country which lies on an industrial scale, we have got to say that nobody really knows. However, having said that, I made a point of speaking to 4 well-connected people in Kyiv before coming on, including one very senior diplomat. And if you look across, I'm looking at various other people. The consensus is that this is almost certainly what we call a red flag operation by the Russians. And that, if I can explain, that is something which the Russians do. They then blame it on somebody else to give them justification to escalate their actions. Now, there seems to be, from everybody I have spoken to, there seems to be very, very little doubt that this, in all likelihood, is a Russian red flag. And could I remind people, going back to 1999, one of the most heinous red flag operations that the Russians carried out was when the Russian security services allegedly, because of course they deny it, blew up 4 apartment blocks in 3 cities, including Moscow, killing over 300 of their own people and wounding 1,000. And that was to give a pretext for the going in to bomb Grozny and the Second Chechen War. And it was that effectively which catapulted Putin into power from his position as prime minister at the time. I would add one more thing further. I have been in a number of confidential briefings during my time in Ukraine when the Ukrainian security forces had foiled Russian red flag attempts. So I think, one, this is something that Russia has absolute form for. We know, that we literally cannot believe anything that Russia says. The other thing to say, of course, is the Ukrainian government has absolutely strenuously denied this. The other thing is, how plausible is it that the Ukrainians could fly a drone all the way to Moscow, getting past their air defences and actually strike the Kremlin? It's just not very plausible.
Cormac Smith is a former strategic communications advisor to Pavlo Klimkin when he was Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Minister. Cormac, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. Let's go back to our story for the hour. Are supermarkets doing enough to combat shoplifting? Is shoplifting becoming normalised? Is it becoming a habit some people have got into? Some even say an addiction. Isn't that medicalising what actually amounts to immoral behaviour? Ravi is in Isleworth. Hi, Ravi.
Yes, good evening, Colin. So I'm coming from 30 years in the retail sector, in corner shops, over 60 years in a family business. So my take on this is it's quite a huge problem in mainly small supermarket express stores, mainly in the self-service checkouts. So now many supermarkets are paying the price of taking staff away from tills. And what happens is people go in, as previous people say, in gangs, and sometimes they scan the self-checkout and they put one thing in the bag or maybe leave one thing in the basket. And by having a receipt to exit that area, this will definitely deter. But let me just tell you one quick story. I was in one of these stores just recently. While somebody wanted to pay, their card was not authorized. They had a fake card, and by the time they got out, the car had gone. Then the cashier came from behind the till and said, why is that person gone? He had run out, put his shopping in the bag, and put some fake card on the machine, and he went with £40 worth of items.
Yeah.
Definitely, these things, and by having an option, not printing a receipt, of course you're asking for trouble.
Well, asking for trouble is exactly right, it will seem to a lot of people, Ravi. This is not rocket science. It was not beyond the wit of man or woman to see that if this was going to happen. I remember when automated checkout started to come along, and you looked at it and thought, OK, you think you're saving money, and you probably are, but where does this end? And I think that what the supermarkets have done, and I'm sure they're taking their cues from other supermarkets in other parts of the world who thought it was a good idea and on balance would probably save them money. But I think this decision to take away people and replace them with machines has actually materially altered the morality of people. And I think the supermarkets have to shoulder a lot of responsibility for changing human behaviour and not for the better.
Yes. Colin, my late father, one of the pioneers of the Asian grocery stores in West London, said that once you replace the human being at the checkout, you're asking for trouble. We all know it happens. It goes on. And with the cost of living crisis, it's got to such a stage now that you watch this space slowly, the people will come back to the checkouts.
Do you think so? Do you really think so?
Absolutely certain. If you look at the big supermarkets, half of it is just automated checkout. And just leave the theft at the checkout. Theft is happening in the aisles. People are consuming items and then putting it back on the shelves.
The thing is, Randy, if you're, let's say you're running a corner shop and it's a million miles away from the big corporate entities, there are no automated checkouts, there's just a man or a woman behind the till. Yes. Do you think there is a knock-on effect that if more and more people are crossing that moral Rubicon, that they do it once, they do it twice, they think it's okay to always steal their lunch from the local supermarket, and they find themselves in the corner shop and they think this is just what you do. So actually what the supermarkets have done then has this spillover effect that's felt even at the level of the corner shop.
But I tell you, Colin, I mean, we have a few. We're not suffering much from theft because, you either come in, most of my customers are loyal, they're local people, you understand, and, we know what they come in for, and we know they go out. There's only one way out, but there's no automated machine to do anything dodgy. But they've got themselves to blame. Look, no receipt, no leaving the store with the with any kind of proof. It's just going on. It's just. But as one thing said, the lady that she was coloured, there might to do with that. I don't think so. I don't think colour will play a part of this thing, because this is mainly in the small, the self-checkout supermarket.
Yeah. Rab, we've got a few calls backing up. We're going to go to them, but thanks for yours. Really appreciate it. In Arms in Redbridge. Hi.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Colin. I just wanted to say, when I was young, when I was going to the supermarket with my parents after our shop, we'd always make sure we'd have the receipt in hand when walking out. I kind of understood that as us doing our due diligence to make sure we're being good citizens in a way. So, first it's always going to be there, and as you said recently, it's been going higher. That could say there's no thieves, or the thieves that they're doing more crime. Either way, theft is going up, and I think instead of complaining about it or doing whatever, I think us as good people who go out there, do our shop properly, we should do our due diligence and make sure we're doing what we can to help out the supermarket or the local shop, wherever.
Yeah. I always used to get a receipt, and not always because I felt that that I might be challenged at the door, but because that when I'd get home I'd be challenged by my late wife, who would say, "Why haven't you got? Did they not have this in the store?" And I'd say, "Well, look there, it's on the receipt." Interesting enough, you think that perhaps we do need to meet the supermarkets halfway. I mean, but does that not? I mean, if you're going into a supermarket where you've paid for your goods, you're going to the exit, and then you have to reach for your receipt, dig it out, or if you've just gone into the supermarket and decided not to buy anything, you've then got to explain to a security guard that that's what you've done. Is there not a sense in which the finger, that sort of cold hand of suspicion, is falling on everybody's shoulders?
No. I think if you're going to a supermarket, especially a big one, you need to understand that, okay, you might get stopped, and if you haven't stolen, you should give it a minute or two just to explain that you haven't stolen. And if you've gone in there not to shop and you walked out there with nothing, you should be ready just to explain, I've just come here, I've done nothing, that's it. It should be good to go. That's what I said. We shouldn't need to complain about it.
Okay.
We should due diligence, understand that might happen, have a bit of patience for it, and then just move on. You're helping the supermarket do their job instead of making it bigger and turning it into something that it isn't.
Patience and supermarkets, not always two words that go together. Really appreciate your call. Thanks very much indeed. This from an anonymous texter who says, "Hi, I live in Blackpool. The amount of shoplifters are coming in the local pubs is an absolute joke. They never stop coming in and selling their stolen goods." Coming up, more of your calls. We'll take a look at some of the front pages from tomorrow's front pages. You're listening to Colin Brazier on LBC. It is 10:46.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
The NHS Staff Council says yes, but the big RCN is not for taking the deal. General Secretary and Chief Executive of the RCN, Pat Cullen, you recommended the deal. The RCN members rejected it. You were also involved in scheduling strike dates, which turned out to be unlawful. Why should the union have respect for you after these miscalculations?
The people that I believe in and that will decide whether or not they have confidence in me are the 300,000 nurses that I represent. They've said loud and clear that they wish to continue on with their industrial action.
But why haven't the other unions accepted?
It's not the prevailing view for our nursing staff that the deal that's on the table is going to fix the long-term problems.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
Are rising costs forcing you into unaffordable debt? An individual voluntary arrangement from CreditFix could help. Write off up to 81% of your unsecured debt with manageable repayments and all interest and charges frozen. With over 14,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, CreditFix could help you to a brighter financial future. Just text DEBT to 66777. Text DEBT to 66777 now. Terms apply. May not be suitable for all. Can affect credit rating. Free advice. moneyhelp.org.uk.
Discover a place of diversity and opportunity where you push boundaries and break barriers.
The University of Hertfordshire shapes tomorrow's leaders and trailblazers. It's somewhere the industry turns to innovate, to grow. This is a place that never settles, never stops. Discover a place where ideas move at a different pace. Hearts beats faster. Search University of Hertfordshire to find out more.
This coronation weekend, why not try juicy New York-style beef burgers, fiery harissa halloumi kebabs, tender chimichurri bavette steaks, or succulent chicken tikka breast kebabs. Delicious. They're all part of the mouth-watering Waitrose barbecue range, and you can now enjoy 2 for £8 on selected barbecue products in-store and online. Make it a sizzling celebration with Waitrose's barbecue offer. Waitrose, food to feel good about.
Selected stores and lines, subject to availability.
Paramount Plus is a mountain of entertainment for only $6.99 a month. Stream the iconic Yellowstone.
I'm doing this for our family.
New Kiefer Sutherland spy thriller Rabbit Hole.
I can't tell what's real and what's not.
The box office smash Smile and brilliant sci-fi drama La Brea.
Where the hell are we?
Feeling flaky? No problem. You can cancel anytime and we're completely ad-free. Except for this one. Blockbusters, originals and iconic shows all on Paramount Plus. Join now. T's and C's apply. Subscription required and 18 plus. Auto renews at $6.99 a month unless cancelled. Price subject to change.
Experience. It's knowing what a healthy deal looks like. Right now, you can get 2 months free when you take out Saga Health Insurance. You get 24/7 GP access all year round whenever you want it. And the freedom to choose your preferred private hospital and room should you need it. Simply search Saga Health Insurance today and get 2 months free. Saga Health Insurance. Experiences everything. Over 50s only.
2 months free for new customers starting before May 15th. Pay by monthly direct debit for the first year. Choose your own hospital by selecting Saga Countrywide Hospital List or London Upgrade.
Colin Brazier on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I suppose it's easy to be a bit sniffy about the supermarket story, saying, you know, it's not very serious important story. It is an important story. We spend a lot of time in supermarkets. And I do think, to some degree, they are setting a moral tone for a lot of people who have found it easier than might have been the case to start thieving. Elaine makes a good point. She's a first-time caller. Not sure if your comments on the police affair. In our area in central London, our community team have great difficulties getting well-known supermarkets to help battle the shoplifter. This is to combat the shoplifter who is nicking to order to pay for his or her drugs. Rife in our area. The police get despondent when the courts don't bother, but they can't do it alone. Fair point. Jules says supermarkets don't care about shoplifting, they just pass on the losses onto honest customers. Have you ever heard of a supermarket reporting an annual loss due to shoplifting? Lots of calls on this. I'll try and get to as many of them as possibly can. Rattling through front pages. Daily Mail, biggest security operation ever, with pictures from last night's rehearsals. Those pictures from last night's rehearsals taken away some of the awe, shock and surprise and wonder, I think, a little bit perhaps. A story I'll just focus on briefly before I go back to supermarkets. Several of the newspapers today, and the Express headline is typical, of focusing on what appears to be a significant medical breakthrough in the battle against Alzheimer's. Real hope in the battle to beat Alzheimer's, says the Express. Lead story 2 in the Telegraph, best ever Alzheimer's drug can halt disease. And on the front of the Times, drug raises hopes of ending Alzheimer's. Scientists said last night it could be the beginning of the end for Alzheimer's after a landmark study showed that a second drug slowed the progress of the disease by about a third. Let's go back to our question. The supermarket's doing enough to combat shoplifting. Craig's in Glasgow. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Colin. It's nice to speak to you.
You too.
Listen, this idea from Sainsbury's it makes me very uncomfortable, to be perfectly honest with you. But first of all, I will be perfectly honest. When I was younger, as a teenager, I did shoplift. Not proud of it, but it's something that I did. You know, I got caught and arrested once. I never done it again because I learned my lesson quite quickly, and that's, you know, I'm just being honest with that. However, for me, if you're walking into a shop and basically you can't get out without evidence, proof that you didn't shoplift, you know, without a receipt, what that sets to me is a tone that suggests that we will treat every customer as a shoplifter until we can prove otherwise. That, to me, doesn't breed good customer sort of service really. And
well, it's setting a tone, isn't it? It's setting a tone, an expectation, and a pretty low bar.
Yeah, exactly. It's punishing the majority for the crimes of the minority, really. And also, the thing that I don't get with how it works, one of the flaws is how many times when you're at the self-service checkout or whatever, I walk away from there without my receipt 9 times out of 10. Because if I'm going in there and I'm buying a sandwich and a bottle of juice, a meal deal or something, I'll scan it, pay for it, and then I'll go because I maybe don't have time because I'm on a lunch break or whatever, you know, and I'll just leave without grabbing the receipt. Now what happens if I get to that door with my items and I don't have the receipt? Am I going to have the indignity of being marched back to the self-scanner by a security guard to get the receipt to prove I didn't steal? Because that would be humiliation for nothing. You know, so I just think you've got to be careful because you can't in prison, and for example, you can't put everybody in jail until we can all prove individually they didn't actually commit any crimes, just in case, you know, because a someone was the one who committed crimes. You can't do that.
No, the principles matter. You're absolutely right. The principles matter. We've got loads of calls on this. I'm going to try and get some of them away. Craig, thanks so much for your call. David in Sheffield, how are you?
Hiya. Mine is a slightly different angle. I'm wondering if people realise that shoplifting's got quite a limited lifespan. There are experiments going on with shops that have no assistance. You scan your card on the way in. Artificial intelligence watches the cameras. You can pick up anything you like and walk out. It will bill you for it on your card. I did a search just to make sure I wasn't daydreaming of but it is going on. It was Amazon was the one I found on the search. It may not be sort of available now, but at the speed that technology comes along, I think that it's just going to be a crime that can't happen.
David, that's a fantastic tangent that I hadn't considered, and you're absolutely right. In time, that might be a solution. We've got David. Appreciate it. Thanks very much indeed. Matt's in Birmingham. Hi, Matt.
Yeah, hi there. Just to say to anybody who said they feel uncomfortable, if they've got nothing to hide, what's the problem? Show you the receipts, not a problem. I want to put a light on the actual workers in the stores.
Please do.
I work for a supermarket chain, and from what I hear, I deliver for them. What I hear in store, the manager actually say don't apprehend the thieves because there's too many thieves out there now claiming that they've been attacked, and it does happen, and they're getting they're claiming money on it, like in the supermarkets before. A lot of the time, and also you don't want to be attacked by these people because if you try and obtain whatever they're trying to steal, if you get stabbed, if you get really, really hurt, is that supermarket, is that company going to pay you out after a certain number of weeks being up on the sick? If you can't come back to work, are they going to pay for the rest of your life? No, that's the reason it's on the up as well, because thieves know for a fact the store colleagues can't do anything. Managers say, don't touch them.
Yeah. No, Matt, this comes as no surprise to me. One of my sisters does 16 hours a week at the Co-op at a store in West Yorkshire, and she tells me stories that I've struggled to believe at times. Yeah. And, the people at the sharp end are the people in the aisles who, because I don't like them being told that they can't intervene if they want to, because I hate it when companies try and make moral choices on behalf of people they employ. I think that's overextension. I think that's going beyond their remit. If people want to take that risk of doing the right thing, they ought to be allowed to do that. But we are ending up with a situation where the people in the aisles, the people who are stacking shelves, in some stores now are wearing body cams. For heaven's sake.
Yes, the one I work for, they wear body cams, but it comes down to management having to spend more money, take more money out of their pot. Stop thinking about profit all the time, take the money from the pot and put it into the stores, because a lot of the managers don't want to take out the pot because they get a big bonus. The more they save each year, the more the bonus they have. Your bosses are like, well, you've saved this much this year, here's your bonus. But then it's putting the safety of the colleagues, it's putting the colleagues' safety at risk. It is.
Matt, appreciate your call. Thanks very much indeed. Norm is in Melbourne. Which one, Norm?
Melbourne, Australia, I'm afraid.
Okay, what light can you shed on Britain's epidemic of shoplifting?
Well, I used to work for a supermarket chain that's implementing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I know from fact is that when you pay for something, you've entered a contract for that. So they've offered to say this is going to cost you $9.99, you pay $9.99 and the goods are yours. If they want to challenge that, if the supermarket wants to challenge that, they have to prove that you haven't paid. So you don't have to show your receipt. There is nothing under law that says you have to stop you. Then they have to arrest you. If they actually want to do it, they have to arrest you and say, we believe you haven't paid, come back to the office. And then you can sue them for false imprisonment. But the issue is very simple. It's everybody has a right to the presumption of innocence. And it is not for a consumer to prove they haven't done something. It's for the supermarket to prove that you have.
But most of us, when we pop out, to pick up a few sausages or some cereal, do not want to feel that we are at the cutting edge of a civil rights dispute.
No, I know, but the fact is, this whole thing with receipts is for any retailer to check a receipt is an infringement on your liberty. Yeah. Your liberty is that you're an innocent person going about your business. You don't have to show your receipt, and if they want to stop you getting out of the store, that's effectively imprisonment. So I think that supermarkets need to rethink this. They've gone through a process of putting in tills that are going to save money, get rid of staff. Now they're losing money because people are stealing stuff. And now they need to find another way, which is to make sure that people are paid. And that's not for you, that's not for me. I don't steal from supermarkets.
Yeah, no, I think there are genuine points of principle raised by this that haven't necessarily been fully ventilated, and I hope we've done that over the last hour. Norm in Melbourne, thanks very much indeed. Just time for this text. Just a heads up, this is, I won't name the supermarket, but it is a well-known one. Our texter says you can ignore it if you like. 1.2 million a week superstore, and over 6 months we lost. How do you think? This texter is claiming £60,000 in shoplifting. Some of that will be company competence, and tens of thousands will be theft.
Coming up, do councils see motorists as cash machines? The RAC says there's been a massive rise in the number of councils raising millions from yellow junction boxes, which drivers stray into. Worse than that, many of these yellow boxes don't comply with government guidelines. Whether it's parking charges that rise way above the rate of inflation, whether it's bus lane cameras, whether it's fines in low traffic zones, is it just too easy for councils that need to replenish their coffers to point the camera at cars and sit back and wait for the cash to flood in? 0345 6060 973. Let us know. Do you feel like a council cash machine in your car?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Russia has accused Ukraine of a failed attempt to assassinate President Putin in an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin. But Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected this, saying they fight only for Ukrainian territory. Ulrika Franke is a senior fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations and an expert in drone politics. She's been telling LBC she's not ruling anything out.
I would be surprised if the whole thing was staged. I mean, there seems to have been an explosion. There's a video. Of course, this can all be faked, but at this point, I don't necessarily think that that's the case. But whether it has been a false flag operation, whether the drone has been piloted by Ukrainian troops, Ukrainian individuals, Russian individuals, we simply don't know.
Police say a 13-year-old boy who killed 9 people in a shooting at a school in Serbia planned his attack meticulously. He shot dead a school guard, followed by 7 girls and a boy in Belgrade. 7 others were also injured. Under Serbian law, the suspect is too young to face charges. His parents have been arrested. Nearly 30,000 police officers are being deployed in London this week, including 11,500 on the Coronation Day itself. Laws have also come into force which ban protesters from blocking roads. Anti-monarchy campaigner Simon Hill says the rules will not stop him from demonstrating.
We all have the right to free expression, the right to protest, and this is a threat to your rights, to my rights, to the rights of everybody listening now, whatever their views are.
A series of strikes by security guards at Heathrow Airport will go ahead tomorrow after last-minute talks broke down. Around 1,400 members of Unite, based at Terminal 5, will walk out 3 times this month. Apple and Google have teamed up to try to stop people using devices such as AirTags for stalking people. They're working on ways to prevent the fobs, which are designed to help people find lost keys and luggage being used for secret surveillance. And thousands of people have signed a petition against a decision made by Girl Guiding UK to end operations for girls who live overseas. Around 2,600 members in 36 countries will no longer be able to participate in activities from September. The organisation says it's no longer able to support the operation under different laws and regulations. LBC weather, rain in the far north of Scotland overnight, clear elsewhere with lows of 3. Rain arriving in the far southwest by the morning, a mixture of sun and cloud elsewhere, with highs of 20 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Charlotte Morgan.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Colin Brazier.
Do councils see motorists as cash machines? I ask because of a report today from the RAC which shows how local authorities are using yellow boxes at junctions to unfairly penalise drivers. There's recently been a big expansion in the number of councils that can impose fines on motorists whose vehicles enter these yellow hatched boxes, and the RAC says many councils have effectively created traps which unfairly penalise drivers no matter how careful they're driving. I'll explain how these yellow boxes work or don't work in a moment, but just to set this in context first, it does appear that local authorities do increasingly view motorists as a soft revenue-raising target. They can dress up measures as principled in the interest of the environment, whilst perhaps tapping car owners for ever more cash. Just to give a few examples, it was reported recently that over 3 years, £100 million in fines had been dished out by councils to drivers who'd driven through low-traffic green zones. Then there are parking charges, with many council-owned car parks raising charges well, significantly above the rate of inflation. Let's not forget bus lanes. A recent audit suggested they are raising, what do you think bus lanes raise for councils? £1 million a week for council coffers, cameras in bus lanes. And now comes a massive expansion in the ability of councils to raise money from motorists as things stood. Only councils in London and in Cardiff, actually, were able to impose fines on drivers whose vehicles stop in yellow junction boxes. Now many, many more can. And to give you a sense of how much money's involved here, I can point you to a Freedom of Information request which found that just 5 junctions raised £2 million for one South London council last year. 5 junctions, 1 year, £2 million. If you're struggling to picture what I'm talking about, particularly if you're not a driver, these junction boxes, they're crisscrossed lines on the ground, painted yellow to indicate where a car cannot stop. They're disliked, that's a kind word, bland word. They're hated by many drivers because it's incredibly easy to misjudge whether you'll need to stop in the box or whether the traffic in front of you is flowing freely enough to allow you through without stopping. I've been caught out at least once before. What the RAC is saying today puts an even more infuriating gloss on the subject because their research shows that many of the yellow junction boxes, which dozens of councils can now use to raise money from, are actually in breach of government guidance. The RAC says there are problems with 90% of these yellow boxes. Some cover areas they ought not to. Others are almost impossible to see in bad weather. That's in breach of government guidance. Well, it might seem like a small thing, but for someone on a limited income who needs their car to get to work or do the school run, these yellow box fines can become a really stressful and daily hazard. And the idea that many of them are not complying with government rules will be galling to many people. I say that whilst accepting the logic, absolutely, of things like parking fines. We can't have a Wild West where people leave their cars willy-nilly wherever they like and behave selfishly. But the yellow boxes suggest something else. That motorists are seen as a cash cow for councils desperate to raise money however they can. What What do you think? Have you fallen foul of these yellow junction boxes? Do they chip away at your sense of what can reasonably be expected of a driver, a conscientious driver? Or perhaps you take the contrary view that we must have tightly enforced rules to make sure that traffic runs smoothly and junctions don't get blocked. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. And yes, more broadly, do you feel that motorists are seen sometimes, oftentimes, as a soft touch by government, whether it's the tax you pay on fuel or the fines dished out in 20-mile-an-hour zones? Are you fed up with being treated like a human cash dispenser? 0345 6060 973. Steve Berry is a motoring journalist and former Top Gear presenter. Evening to you, Steve.
Yes, good evening to you.
Hello there. So, there's a well-worn narrative, I suppose, that councils in particular, central government too, see motorists as a politically risk-free cash machine. The latest twist, the RAC say that councils, more and more councils, are using those yellow hatched boxes into which it's all too easy to stray in your car as a new means of revenue raising. Is that how you see things?
Yeah, absolutely. I got busted at what I think is the highest cash generating yellow hatch box in Britain, which is the one at Archway in London, which is ironically right by the pub where, as a teenager, Colin Chapman built the first Lotus car, literally at the back of that pub. And I thought, when I got the notice then, and here was the thing, I entered the box because I couldn't see that my exit was clear. And I stopped in the box. Do you know why I stopped in the box? I'll tell you. Because I was following two double-decker buses. I couldn't see round two double-decker buses the fact that the traffic was coming to a halt. So yes, in the photograph that they painted with a huge fine, I had stopped. But what am I supposed to do? No, stop behind a green light and wait until I could see that the road was clear. Well, that could have been a very long time.
Well, and you would have to put up with all of the cars behind you, clapping the horns, urging you to get on.
We've got another one here in Manchester. Bridge Street is apparently, in Manchester, just off Heathgate, right off the central drag in the centre of town, is allegedly the busiest bus route in Europe. At the bottom, it's just been turned into a bus lane. Not one lane of the road, because it's a Victorian city and we've still got Victorian infrastructure largely, even though skyscrapers are popping up like it's a sort of Dubai with lots of rain up here. But we've still got these Victorian roads all over the place. I've been driving up Bridge Street for literally decades. The other day I found out I got a ticket. I didn't think, Bridge Street has suddenly been made a bus lane. Yeah, it has. I met a friend in the local. He said, have you got a ticket for driving up Bridge Street? I said, yeah. He said, there's a big fuss in the Manchester Evening News about it because here's the thing, there's no alternative. The only thing that you could do if you manage to spot it at the last second is to stop and perform an about turn. Now, I'd like to see you try and do that on the busiest bus route in Europe. Go on, see how far you get.
Isn't the problem here that a lot of us who think, we all think we're terrific drivers, don't we? But a lot of us who think we're reasonable drivers at least, hate the iniquity of this, the unfairness of it. There's absolutely nothing you can do. You are just a victim of circumstances. If you find yourself following those two buses as you did, if you find yourself suddenly on a road that you didn't know had become a bus lane, there's very little you can do in terms of preparation or remedying the situation there and then. You just got to suck up the fine.
Well, not necessarily. And there's also a fantastic opportunity for sarcasm, which I don't think works really well with computers, but hopefully as a human being in some part of the process. I was driving through Camden in my very nice Mercedes 350 SE, classic car, still on the road, 45 years into its life. Front cover star, Mercedes enthusiast at one point, although the shine fell off the apple of it, that was a few years ago. And I pulled over and stopped on a double red line, which of course is a terrible sin in London. They sent me the photographs, or rather the computer sent me the photographs, and I pointed out they didn't send photographs. Yes, I was indeed stopped on the double red line, but that's because there was a uniformed police officer stood in the road with his hand raised. and if I had stopped at the red light,
2 tons of Germany's finest would have crushed him to death as I mauled the officer down. You know, if a human being had looked at that photograph, the policeman stood, a tall policeman stood in the road holding his hand up, and the car stopped, it would have thought, oh, well, no, that's obviously, policeman, you know, that guy had to stop. I'm not for unrestricted parking. No. We had a problem where I lived in the centre of Manchester until recently where the council forgot to reapply for the parking restrictions. Somebody who presumably worked there told someone else, and within a week we had utter chaos.
You have to ration road space, and we know that. We know that it would be chaos, and it would be chaos if bus lanes weren't policed properly. I just think you say machines, yes, and we get that, but there's people behind the machines, and I think of a fairly recent Freedom of Information request put to the South London Council, which found that something in the order of £2 million in a year was raised from 5 separate cameras where there are hatched junctions, just from 5 hatched junctions, £2 million. If you're running the coffers of a council in straitened financial circumstances, the attraction of a revenue-raising and seemingly pain-free revenue-raising method like that, well, you can see how attractive it is, can't you?
I mean, yes, councils, I agree with you, councils have got used to the money, and I've sat in my local, which is a very eclectic bunch of people in it, and there are quite a few councillors who go in, and the guys said to me, Steve, we need the money. We need the money. He said, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to put the old people on ice floors and push them out into the North Sea? You know, it's like we need the money to keep, this is, you know, I'm in Salford, I'm in Charlestown, which is quite appropriate at, you know, with once a minute, in Salford. And he said, keeping those schools open, looking after those old people, we need that money. And, yes, motorists are a great cash cow because they're all going round with this number on the front and the back of their vehicle, which allows you to tax them directly and instantly. It takes a picture, it sends a letter, and it's £40, £80, £120.
It's an incredibly efficient way of raising money, isn't it? I just wish we could have that kind of transparency that you enjoy in the pub. Transparency, there's a word to describe what happens in pubs. But we don't do it. It seems that the broader picture, when you look at the broader picture of the tax burden that's placed on motorists, particularly through things like the tax take from the fuel forecourts, for instance, that very often it's dressed up as environmentalism, it's dressed up as good for the environment, but actually it's a bit grubbier than that. It is just principally about making money.
Yeah, and we know it. And it always has been. It always has been. I enjoyed the brief holiday that we had with electric cars. I mean, it must be about, how long have we got now? 18 months ago, I took on a challenge from someone who was leaving the motor industry after a long and illustrious career, and he heard me on another radio station on a show where the Defence Initials made with JB, and he said, I challenge you, this chap, Steve, to do the annual UK mileage, which is just over 7,000 miles of driving in a month in an electric car. And I hit an absolute sweet spot, because at that time, Manchester Council had this green initiative where not only was it free to park in one of these charging bays, the charge was free as well. And that's 18 months ago. And now, that is inconceivable that you would be allowed to park free and get... I was getting 250 miles of charge and 25 quid worth of free parking every time I pulled up this electric car.
It was a very sweet spot.
Every time I walked away from it, this won't last. And guess what? It didn't.
Steve Berry, motoring journalist, former Top Gear presenter, with his thoughts on those hashed boxes and other measures councils employ to raise revenue from motorists. Sarah says councils are ripping drivers off. I've paid £3,000 in fines in 2.5 years. And some of you sympathetic to what councils are doing, including is it Christine? Yes, Christine says, I've never been fined for stopping in the yellow box. I obey the highway code. Why do drivers think the rules don't apply? machine, as you're listening to Colin Brazier on LBC. It's 11:17.
This is LBC.
Are rising costs forcing you into unaffordable debt? An individual voluntary arrangement from CreditFix could help. Write off up to 81% of your unsecured debt with manageable repayments and all interest and charges frozen. With over 14,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, CreditFix could help you to a brighter financial future. Just text DEBT to 66777. Text DEBT to 66777 now. Terms apply. Made up suitable for a Benefit credit rating. Free advice on moneyhelp.org.uk.
Celebrate the Coronation Weekend with 25% off any 6 bottles of wine or fizz priced over £5 at Waitrose. Your extensive choice includes an aromatic San Leo Prosecco, the exceptionally drinkable Provençal Rosé Whispering Angel, a fruity Nightimber Classic Cuvée, and a vividly herby The Ned Sauvignon Blanc. A toast, anyone?
Selected stores and lines, subject to availability. Excludes Scotland, Wales and Jersey.
You know that guy I've been seeing?
Yeah.
Turns out my sister's been seeing him too.
Oh, really?
And I heard he's been seeing Kelly at number 56. And Dave.
Your brother?
Yep.
Specsavers opticians and audiologists own their stores, so your care is their business, which can make them rather popular.
I've got something to tell you. I've got half an hour with him this afternoon.
Specsavers, your care is our business.
Paramount Plus is a mountain of entertainment for only $6.99 a month. Stream the iconic Yellowstone.
I'm doing this for our family.
New Kiefer Sutherland spy thriller Rabbit Hole.
I can't tell us real movies enough.
The box office smash Smile and brilliant sci-fi drama La Brea.
How are we?
Feeling flaky? No problem. You can cancel anytime and we're completely ad-free. Except for this one. Blockbusters, originals and iconic shows all on Paramount Plus. Join now. T's and C's apply. Subscription required 18 plus. Auto renews at $6.99 per month unless cancelled. Price subject to change.
Want to get more done? Whether it's moving out, throwing a party, starting a business, or just getting a hedge trim in the shape of a unicorn, no questions asked. AirTasker is the app that helps you tick off your to-do list by connecting you to skilled locals. It's as simple as posting a task, choosing a tasker based on their ratings and reviews, and then done. AirTasker. Get more.
One thing we can all agree on, no one wants another energy crisis. But just talking about it won't make it go away. Here's what we're actually doing at British Gas. We're increasing the UK's gas storage so that we can help make energy prices more predictable for everyone. And so the 7.5 million homes and businesses who rely on us for their energy today can rely on us tomorrow too. That's enough talking. Let's get on with the doing. British Gas.
Colin Brazier on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Coming up to 21 minutes past 11, I've been tweeted, post on Twitter, regarding Box Junction fines. I was heartened to hear your commentator, that was Steve Berry from New Top here, mention the one near Archway in London. That one got me around 10 years ago. As he mentioned, it's the biggest revenue generator in the country. No doubt appeals will get you off. Why are we talking about this? Because it appears these yellow hatched areas on the road
of occasions when I got you can ride in motorbike in the bus lane on the red routes or certain roads. Other ones you can't. And sometimes if the signage isn't right, you get it wrong. And I went into a bus lane which wasn't okay for motorcycles. And when I checked out the markings of the bus lane, there were about 3 things wrong with it, and I appealed on it, and I won my appeal. For instance, the lead-in, the kind of lead-in that tells you that a bus lane is coming, is supposed to be 10 times the width of the bus lane. So if you've got a bus lane that's 4 metres wide, the lead-in has to be, the taper as they call it, has to be 40 metres long.
That's a long way.
And then in front of that, there has to be, I think, 30 metres of the sign saying bus lane head. And almost none of them apply. And if you go to the appeal, you'll get off because you don't have enough time to get out of the way of the bus lane before. And soon after that, I just steered out of the bus lane, or thinking, I'm not sure I should be in here or not. So I moved out, and that went in my favour as well. So I think the bottom line is you have to know what the rules are. Don't let them get you, and generally then you'll be okay. But some people just don't know the rules.
Yeah. I just wonder sometimes that the rules will take you so far, and it's possible obviously to challenge the rules when they're not being appropriately applied on the ground, literally. But I just wonder sometimes whether there's a sense that, you know, it's 7:30 in the morning, you're in the car, the toddler's screaming in the back, you're trying to get to the childminders, whatever it is, you stop because you're a conscientious driver, you don't want to flout the rules. There's a hatch yellow area in front of you, and you're waiting. Meanwhile, the cars behind you are starting to get frustrated because they don't understand why you're not moving forward, so they start back. And you're a little bit frazzled, and you edge. You think you can see your way clear. There's enough room, but actually the car that's moving suddenly stops, and lo and behold, your back tyres jutting out over the hatch yellow, and that's what happens again and again.
Yeah, and quite often you sometimes have a bus lane, where the bus lane is continuous, but where there's a side road, it's dotted. It's to allow you to turn into the side road without impinging on the bus lane. But quite a lot of people cut the corner and their wheel goes over the solid line and they get nicked for it. You've just got to know the rules. I've been driving a fair amount in London where there's 20 miles an hour all over the place. And I was driving up to pick up my son about 12 at night. No traffic on the road, hardly. And it's all 20 miles an hour along huge roads. And of course, I don't know where the cameras are. Whereas a lot of locals do know where their cameras are, so they're clambering all over your back because you're driving at 20. Yeah. They know that to drive at 30 or 40 without giving pause. And I just go, sorry, that's what I'm doing. That's the speed I'm going to drive at. If you want to overtake. But I'm driving at 20 until I'm absolutely certain that I can go faster in 30. It's a bit of a wild west. The main thing is just trying to look out for yourself and just know what rules are and don't transgress them, don't chance it.
And Steve, more generally, on my suggestion that oftentimes perhaps motorists are seen as effectively as a soft touch, an easy way of raising revenue if you're a council that needs to raise money. Do you take that point?
Yes, I do, completely. But that's the point, Colin, is that don't let them do it to you because you are falling into their trap. It's like allowing yourself to be conned. It's like a scam. You get a scam text or something like that. You allow yourself to be scammed. If you don't react to it or you are guarded about it and know what you're doing, then they can't get the money out of you. And that's the principle I was trying to get across.
No, you've done so very lucidly, Steve. Thanks very much indeed. Kevin's in Chichester. Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, hi, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Just take you off speaker, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Right, okay.
is a bit wonky, so apologies. We'll maybe try and get to dial again on a landline or something really old-fashioned like that. If you are just tuning in, are councils treating drivers as cash machines? This in the context of an RAC report this morning looking at hashed yellow boxes. Yes, many of you have been pointing out it's essential if you want to have busy roads rationed fairly and make sure that busy junctions are not blocked by selfish drivers. We all get that. We all forget that very often, without intentionally aiming to block any kind of junction, people wind up in them and getting big fines. Now that's a separate issue from what the RAC is saying, which is that many more councils have the jurisdiction over these yellow boxes and make a lot of money out of the fines that go on them. But actually 90% of the hatched yellow areas not complying with government guidance. You can't see them when the weather's not great. They extend into areas they ought not to extend into. And in fact, we just had a caller who's making the point that very often what we think are carefully laid out bus lanes or hatched areas, actually, according to the strict letter of the law, they're pretty botched jobs for hatched areas. Are councils treating drivers as cash machines? That is our question. The number of calls lining up is one of those subjects that people live with and actually often get some big bills to pay as a consequence as well. We'll take some of the calls very shortly. Are councils treating drivers as cash machines? You're listening to Colin Brazier on LBC. More of those calls next. It's 11:30. Let's get the latest LBC News headlines now with Charlotte Moore.
Russia is accusing Ukraine of a failed attempt to assassinate President Putin in an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin. Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected this, saying they only fight for Ukrainian territory. Police say a 13-year-old boy who killed 9 people in a shooting at a school in Serbia planned his attack meticulously. His parents have been arrested because he's too young to face charges under Serbian law. And a series of strikes by security guards at Heathrow Airport will go ahead tomorrow after last-minute talks broke down. It involves 1,400 members of Unite based at Terminal 5. LBC weather, rain arriving in the far southwest overnight, mixture of sunshine and cloud tomorrow, highs of 20.
This is LBC.
I'm Susan Tanner from the Darwood & Tanner Dental Practice, a specialist in prosthodontics. I love working with dental implants to help patients with missing teeth regain their smile and their confidence. If you're choosing dental implants, our team are the experts who will be by your side for the whole journey.
From gum care to dental implants, Darwood & Tanner, celebrating 30 years at the forefront of world-class dentistry.
To find out more and meet our team, start at darwoodandtanner.co.uk.
Sell your car the motorway way, where dealers compete to give you their best price.
Compete? Like a sing-off?
Start bidding!
£13,500?
£14,000? No way.
Yes, way! Motorway, the way to sell your car. T's and C's apply.
Have a party fit for a king with our bank holiday offers at Robert Dyers. Get up to 50% off selected garden and entertaining essentials. We've got everything you need from bunting to barbecues to help you celebrate. And make your lawn something to be proud of. Achieve pitch-perfect lines with a Black & Decker mower at only $49.99. For all your home and garden needs, find us on your local high street or at robertdyers.co.uk.
Celebrate the Coronation Weekend with 25% off any 6 bottles of wine or fizz priced over £5 at Waitrose. Your extensive choice includes an aromatic San Leo Prosecco, the exceptionally drinkable Provençal Rosé Whispering Angel, a fruity Nightingale Classic Cuvée, and a vividly herby The Ned Sauvignon Blanc. A toast, anyone?
Selected stores and lines, subject to availability. Excludes Scotland, Wales and Jersey.
Anika wanted to rent her flat out so she could move in with Mo. Graham had to find a home with space for his growing family. Sophie wanted a shorter commute to the office. And Alex wanted a home and a project in one. Everyone's story is different, but wherever life takes you, Leaders Estate Agents will get you there. Leaders, celebrating 40 years in property. Visit leaders.co.uk.
Grab a Santander Cycles e-bike and find a great way to discover a new side to London. Grab an easy way to stay healthy. Try a new way to get to work or even just to get around town. And grab
in urban areas where there's a busy junction, which for all the right reasons we don't want to have blocked to create congestion and gridlock. And there are cameras monitoring and deterring people from straying into these areas when they shouldn't. This Freedom of Information request revealed that this one South London council, in the space of 1 year, from 5 hatched boxes, raised £2 million. And they are a cash cow. Are they a deterrent? Well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it? Depends where you are. Quite often, and we're hearing this again and again, it may have happened to you, it's certainly happened to me on one occasion, that you've done everything you can to avoid going into one of these hatched areas, but notwithstanding your best efforts, you end up straying into them or not being able to get out of them in the way that you thought you could do. And the point about the reason we're doing the story today is that the RAC has found that many more councils will have these powers to impose fines. Actually, that's not the story. The story is that the RAC really has found that 90% of these hatched areas do not comply with government guidelines. Our councils treating drivers as cash machines and as fools, we might add as well. Joseph is in Kingsbury. Hi, Joseph.
Oh, hello, Colin. How are you?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, I think yes, they are, because they realise that there is money to be made from it, and of course they do get to say that they're enforcing the law by when they do it, so they believe that taking the moral high ground. I mean, I reported into the public junctions on Kingsbury Road here, and they've now got it down to a fine art. I mean, there's a picture. They've even got like a little video of you going in and catching you there for a few seconds, and then you going off. So really, it is.
There's not much cost there for them, is there? There isn't much cost for them.
No, there isn't, because at the end of the day, the cameras, the cameras are already there. And I mean, to give you an example, I used to take the A312 to the Target roundabout, and if you're on the A312 in South Harrow, when the bus lane is in effect, the CCTV cameras is pointing right down the bus lane. It never moves. Once the bus lane is no longer in effect, you actually see the CCTV camera actually moving and pointing to other parts of the road. So I actually think, yes, it is there for a specific purpose. And if you've paid for all that technology, you've got to get some reward. You've got to get some return on your investment. Is probably the way they look at it. And it's a big return.
As we just made clear, 2 million from 5 hatch boxes in 1 year. Joseph, we've got loads of calls coming on this. It's really getting people going. Let's turn to, I'll say thank you for your contribution. Tanya is in East Horsley in Surrey. Hi, Tanya.
Hello, good evening, Colin. Mine is more about bus lanes. My husband and I were driving, trying to get to High Holborn, and there were so many road closures. You couldn't sort of turn left, you couldn't turn right, and everything was virtually at a standstill. Then all of a sudden we can hear an ambulance trying to get through, really ringing his bell constantly. My husband moved just slightly to the left, with not even halfway into a bus lane to let the ambulance try to get through, and he got fined. And he wrote and explained exactly why he'd done it. Didn't make the slightest bit of difference.
That does not feel like justice in action, does it?
No, it isn't. And, there ought to be certain exemptions. And presumably they've got it all on camera so they can see exactly what's happened. And there weren't even any buses there because the buses were all stuck too.
On the specific point, I mean, that's the bus lane. And we know, I forget the figure I quoted, it was at £100 million a year from bus lane floodings. I mean, and you can see if you are a council that is struggling to pay for important public services and is limited in the amount of council tax it can pull in, then the temptation must be there, mustn't it, to say, well, we've got the infrastructure, this thing sort of runs itself. If people go into these bus lanes or hatched areas, the picture's taken by the automatic system and it's mailed out. We don't even get involved. There's no paperwork for us. We just sit back and watch the lolly flood in.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that in much poorer boroughs, but I mean, we're now talking about London, aren't we? And we're talking, about Carnham and
writes from Kent. The councils are only about generating money. I tried to appeal using the legislation as I was exempt from work periods, and there were errors in the fine. They threatened with a bailiff and forced me to take them to court. They don't care about legislation or exemptions within the rules. I suppose they're not here to answer that charge, and they may feel that they were interpreting the rules correctly, and not the plaintiff. This is from Ben in Tottenham. These yellow boxes are also dangerous and can cause accidents. On my local high road, there is a very busy junction with many school children crossing at busy times. Cars are always stopping before the yellow box, well past the traffic light. When the light turns red, they either end up blocking the pedestrians from crossing safely or end up driving through the red light. A different perspective from Ben, who's texting from Tottenham in London. Sheridan is in Valencia in Spain. Hi, Sheridan.
Good morning, sir.
Nice to hear from you again. What's your perspective on this one?
Basically, yes. I always give a bit of a different and double perspective. I totally understand these box crossings, and I see a point to them. Unfortunately, due to the heavy denseness of traffic, it's very difficult if you're in a rush, if you're in a bit of a mood, if you've had an argument, to basically take other people into account. So you're just driving, you want to get to where you want to go, and you end up in these box junctions. You end up with many fines. If you're in a normal mood, you're not in a rush, you're basically just gliding along, taking your time, you always stop before a box junction. So it really depends for me at least, what mood I'm in, what type of day I'm having.
Yeah.
But I totally agree that councils do take advantage of the basic ignorance of people that do not really know the law in and out, like this woman just beforehand that said her husband, due to an ambulance, had to turn into just two wheels into the lane, and no matter through an appeal, still had no joy. It's basically a disgrace that we get to that stage, because I totally agree with fining people, but at least have 100% sureness that you are fining correctly. There's many people that...
Yeah, just Sheridan, just on the use of the word ignorance there, I think you're onto something. I mean, it is on one level a sort of tax on ignorance, this, and I don't mean to use the word unkindly. No. I mean, so for instance, you're visiting an area for the first time. You're going to visit some relatives. You're travelling somewhere for work. I mean, certainly in parts of Britain's built environment, there's lots of things that are distracting you. You may be looking at sat-nav. You don't know the area. You are surely more likely to then receive a fine as a newcomer to that area. Yeah.
A prime example, bus lanes. They do not, they're not effective 24 hours a day. So in many different areas, it's different timetables. Maybe through ignorance, in your area it's 2 till 8 p.m. that you can go into it. Maybe in a different area it's not. You're in a rush, you go into it, and it's just through ignorance, through not knowing the right timetables, because they're not all in accordance. Every borough has their own timetable, their own type of different quirky arrangements, and you get caught out through not knowing. Then there's the other side. Back in the day, I didn't follow any rules at all. As you know, cars in England, I live in Spain now, you have to go through you have to get legal representation to change your car's name so that they can verify that you're the person. In England, I would buy a car, say that my name was John Burrows, and I can drive wherever I want. I'm not getting a single fine. So this is what I was wondering, whether that 2 million revenue is basically just fines that they've sent out but not cashed in, or if that is actually what they're cashing in. Because I put my hands up, I basically did not follow the rules. I paid the price for it. I spent many years in jail. And when I came out, all of the fines were basically just disappeared, like they wiped the slate clean. And I don't really see that fine that fair either, just because you've done a bigger crime. I think everybody should pay. But it's just that they take advantage of people that do not check their bank accounts, that have a lot of money and they don't really care, of people that, just basically do not have time to maybe start appealing. It's not easy, the appeal process.
No, and you can imagine why it's not made easy, can't you, to deter people from pursuing a course of action against the council. Sharon, I'm going to say thanks very much indeed. And also, I'm going to try and recognise the other side of this conversation as well. A few of you have been keen to point out that at the end of the day, if you are extremely careful, and conscientious, you are less likely, let's put it that way, you are less likely to have a fine and become effectively a cash cow for the council. One of our texts says, I had a letter from the council taking me to court for parking wrongly. It was dated in 2018. How do I know who was driving my car then? Let's take more of your calls after the break. You're listening to Colin Brazier on LBC. It is 11:45.
LBC, Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
The NHS Staff Council says yes, but the big RCN is not for taking the deal. General Secretary and Chief Executive of the RCN, Pat Cullen, you recommended the deal and the RCN members rejected it. You were also involved in scheduling strike dates, which turned out to be unlawful. Why should the union have respect for you after these miscalculations?
The people that I believe in and that will decide whether or not they have confidence in me are the 300,000 nurses that I represent. They've said loud and clear that they wish to continue on with their industrial action.
But why would the other unions accept it?
It's not the prevailing view of our nursing staff that the deal that's on the table is going to fix the long-term problems.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
In a crisis, service matters. Which surveyed more than 10,000 energy customers and independently assessed the performance of every major supplier. Only one measured up. Octopus Energy is the only Which recommended energy supplier. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which, 6 years running.
At Lidl, we're big on a British summer, and for the King's coronation, one goes extra big and British. So please enjoy a large pack of strawberries for $2.79, a sweet coronation muffin for 89p, and deluxe English sparkling wine for $14.99. Now that's big on quality, and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes N9.
Hello, did you know that the ULEZ is expanding across all London boroughs from the 29th of August this year to help make the air clearer? Really? Yeah, I did not know. So, have you checked your vehicle?
Just went online, TfL, tapped in the registration number, and it was compliant.
All you need to do is just search TfL Vehicle Checker to check your vehicle. I'm going to do that right now.
9 out of 10 cars driving in outer London meet the emissions standards. Search TfL Vehicle Checker. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Many people struggle with loose and missing teeth. Often their dentist has told them nothing can be done. Let the TDC team restore your teeth, your smile, and your confidence with our award-winning Smile in a Day dental implant treatment. Book your consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
Paramount Plus is a mountain of entertainment for only $6.99 a month. Stream the iconic Yellowstone.
I'm doing this for our family.
New Kiefer Sutherland spy thriller Rabbit Hole.
I can't tell what's real and what's not.
The box office smash Smile and brilliant sci-fi drama La Brea.
Where the hell are we?
Feeling flaky? No problem. You can cancel anytime and we're completely ad-free. Except for this one. Blockbusters, originals and iconic shows all on Paramount Plus. Join now. T's and C's apply. Subscription required and 18 plus. Auto renews at $6.99 per month unless cancelled. Price subject to change.
Right now at B&Q, get 20% off garden furniture and 20% off barbecues. So you can eat, chill, play, repeat all summer long. Shop in-store at DIY.com or on the B&Q app. You can do it. Exclusions and terms and conditions apply. Ends 8th of May. See DIY.com for details.
Want to get more done? Moving out, throwing a party, starting a business, or just getting a hedge trimmed in the shape of a unicorn, no questions asked. Airtasker is the app that helps you tick off your to-do list by connecting you to skilled locals. It's as simple as posting a task, choosing a tasker based on their ratings and reviews, and then done. Airtasker. Get more.
In a crisis, service matters. Octopus Energy is the only Which recommended energy supplier. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which, 6 years running.
Colin Brazier on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
RAC report this morning. Councils are fleecing motorists by creating hatched areas, those yellow hatched areas, that do not fulfil and comply with government guidance itself. The point about this is it's a massive revenue raiser for councils, along with the parking fines, along with the low emission zones, and any other measure that seems to, if you are a motorist at times, makes you feel like the councils are treating drivers as cash machines, not just car drivers, van drivers and lorry drivers as well. Mark's in Chelmsford in Essex. Hi, Mark.
Hello there, Colin, you all right?
Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to put a point across from a lorry driver's point of view. I mean, our motors are 45, 50 foot long. The problems for me are the box junctions where you've got 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out, like on Euston Road, because you need 40, 50 foot in front of you before you can go over the box junction. But what happens if you're at a red light? I guarantee a car in the outside, if he sees a gap of 30 foot in the inside lane, he'll jump on it. Now, if he does that as you're pulling away, you're left with your back end 6 foot in the box junctions, which happened to me once. But sometimes it's out of our control, you know. You might have a clear path to go at the time you pull away, but then, boom, a car's there and you're done. Like, you know, it's
yeah. I think people hate it, Mark. I think people hate it when they've done everything they possibly can, exercising every ounce of their judgment to make sure they do not infringe the law, and then, because of something that's out of their control, they still get a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, and it's lazy policing as well, because all you receive is a picture of your rear axle in a box junction with a time on it. You know,
no context. No context.
Like, hang on a minute, what happened was, you know, if you was to get pulled up at the time it happened, you'd say to a cop, "Yeah, I'm really sorry, it was clear, but that guy just pulled in front of me." You'd maybe get a bit of leniency, but pictures aren't always clear cut, are they?
Does it make sense to you, Mark, that councils in particular are going to see, when they're looking for any way they can pull in money, are going to see motorists as a means of raising easy cash?
Oh, absolutely. I had an issue on the M11 once, and that was, there's a section where lorries are not allowed in the outside lane to overtake at certain times of day. I was in a tanker coming up to a circus lorry, which is going really slow. Nothing in the outside lane, so I've gone